The grand mansion stood tall, its shimmering glass windows reflecting the evening sun like sharp blades. Inside, Ethan Blake, the handsome, wealthy millionaire, sat alone in his lavish study. His blue eyes, once warm and full of laughter, now held a cold, bitter gleam. Betrayal had turned him into a man driven by revenge. His heart, once open, was now a fortress of ice. Ethan's hand trembled as he clutched a photograph of Vanessa Cole, the woman he thought would be his forever. She was beautiful, charming, and deceitful. A cruel smile crept onto his face as he remembered how she had left him for his wealthiest rival, shattering his pride and tearing apart the heart he foolishly offered her. "I'll show them," Ethan muttered under his breath. "If love is a joke, then I'll be the one laughing last." His gaze drifted to Lila Dawson, the maid quietly dusting a shelf in the corner. With her dull clothes, thick glasses, and messy hair, she was invisible in the eyes of the rich. She moved with silent grace, avoiding attention, but Ethan's eyes caught something deeper, a sadness, a weariness, as if she carried the weight of countless sorrows. A cruel idea took root in Ethan's mind. What better way to mock love, to spit in Vanessa's face, than by marrying someone so beneath society's standards? He would turn his maid into a millionaire's wife, parade her around the same social circles that once worshipped Vanessa. His lips curled into a smirk. "Lila," Ethan called, his voice sharp. She stiffened, placing the duster aside before approaching him, eyes lowered. "Yes, sir?" she asked softly, hiding the trembling in her voice. "I want you to marry me." The room fell silent, the words hanging in the air like a cruel joke. Lila's heart pounded violently. She had expected many things in this house. Insults, indifference, but never this. I don't understand, sir," she whispered. Ethan leaned back, enjoying the flicker of fear and confusion in her pale face. "You heard me. Be my wife. It's not out of love. It's a deal. You'll get a comfortable life, money, protection. In return, you'll play the role of Mrs. Ethan Blake." Lila's lips quivered. She knew this wasn't kindness. She saw the bitterness in his eyes, felt the venom in his tone. But deep inside, a cold, desperate voice screamed that she couldn't refuse. Not when danger lurked outside these walls. She had run far, changed her name, hid her face, but the shadows of her past were catching up. "I'll do it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan raised a brow. "No questions?" She forced herself to look up, meeting his gaze. Her heart shattered in her chest, but she masked it well. "A deal's a deal, sir." Ethan smirked, pleased. Little did he know, beneath her plain exterior was a woman far more valuable than he could imagine. A secret heiress, a hunted princess hiding behind a mask of ugliness. This marriage wasn't just her salvation, it was her only hope of survival. As Ethan poured himself a glass of whiskey, smug with his plan, Lila turned away, clutching the pain in her chest like a shield. Neither of them realized that this cruel deal would soon unravel both their worlds, bringing them face to face with truths too powerful to ignore. The deal was sealed, in bitterness, in pain, and in silence. And so, the cruel game began. The grand hall shimmered with gold chandeliers and crimson roses, filled with the scent of expensive perfume and pretentious smiles. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns gathered, not to celebrate love, but to witness the spectacle of scandal. The whispers started long before the bride arrived. "Did you see her? That plain maid marrying Ethan Blake? What's he thinking? Has he lost his mind? She's not even pretty. What a joke." Their cruel laughter echoed through the marble walls like sharp needles against the skin. Ethan stood tall at the altar, his face emotionless, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His blue eyes scanned the crowd with icy indifference, but deep down there was a flicker of bitterness. This was his revenge. Every glance, every snicker from his so-called friends was exactly what he wanted them to see. Then the doors opened. Lila walked in, draped in a simple white gown. No diamonds, no silk veils. Her face was half hidden by her thick glasses, her hair pulled tightly back. She looked painfully out of place among the glittering women, like a forgotten servant thrown into the spotlight. Gas spread like wildfire. Is that really her? She's even worse up close. Poor Ethan. What a waste. Vanessa Cole stood among the guests, her red lips curled in a satisfied smirk. Dressed in a dress that shimmered like liquid silver, she was a vision of beauty, drinking in every humiliating moment. She relished the sight of Lila, plain, trembling, unworthy, taking the place she believed still belonged to her. As Lila approached, Ethan barely spared her a glance. He didn't take her hand. He didn't smile. He didn't care. "This is nothing but a performance," he muttered under his breath. The vows were exchanged in mechanical tones. Ethan's voice was cold, detached, while Lila's barely carried through the hall. The officiant hesitated but declared them husband and wife. A shallow applause followed, filled with sarcasm and smirking faces. At the reception, Ethan treated Lila like she didn't exist. He laughed with other women, danced with old flames, leaving her standing alone in a corner. Every time their eyes met, his were filled with ice, hers with pain carefully masked behind the thick lenses she wore. But no one noticed the way Lila's hand trembled as she gripped her champagne glass. No one saw the flicker of steel in her gaze, or the secret she clutched so tightly in her heart. For beneath the timid, awkward bride was a woman carrying a truth so explosive it could ruin lives, tear apart fortunes, and dismantle the empire these people worshipped. And Vanessa, smug, cruel Vanessa, had no idea that the woman she scorned was the very storm that could destroy them all. The night dragged on, the fake smiles never fading. And while Ethan thought he held control, while the world mocked and belittled her, Lila silently made a vow. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The cold wedding was done, and the dangerous game had begun. The night sky split open with flashes of lightning, thunder rumbling like a beast awakened. Rain lashed against the towering windows of the mansion, its cold fury mirroring the storm brewing inside Ethan Blake's heart. The wedding was over, but its bitter taste clung to him like poison. Ethan stumbled into the grand hallway, his expensive jacket discarded, his tie hanging loose. The glass of whiskey in his hand sloshed dangerously with each unsteady step. His thoughts swirled, drenched in anger and emptiness. Everywhere he turned, he saw faces mocking him. Vanessa's smug smile, the guests' cruel laughter, Lila's silent, pitiful presence. Damn them all, he spat, his voice hoarse. He had ordered Lila to stay in the servants' quarters. Out of my sight, he'd snapped before storming off to drink away his humiliation. He didn't need her near him. Not tonight, not ever. To him, she was a symbol of mockery, a pawn in his twisted game. But fate had other plans. As another crash of thunder shook the walls, Ethan pushed open a door, thinking it was his study. The room was dim, lit only by the flicker of lightning through the curtains. He stumbled inside, rubbing his eyes when his gaze fell upon a figure sitting by the vanity. There she was. But it wasn't the Lila he thought he knew. The woman before him had let down her hair, long, silky strands of midnight cascading down her back. The glasses were gone, revealing luminous, tear-filled eyes like rare jewels. Her skin was flawless, porcelain kissed by moonlight. The thick, ugly makeup was wiped clean, exposing soft, angelic features that took his breath away. Ethan froze. His heart hammered in his chest as if it wanted to escape. For a long moment, he forgot to breathe. Who? The word escaped him before he could stop it. Lila turned, startled, her eyes wide. In that instant, she wasn't the awkward, clumsy maid. She wasn't the plain, pitiful bride. She was something else, a vision, a dream he didn't believe could exist. Sir, you shouldn't be here, she stammered, scrambling to grab her glasses, her wig, the veil of her disguise. But it was too late. Ethan's world tilted. Every cruel word, every mocking smirk he had thrown at her, twisted inside him like a blade. He couldn't look away. The woman before him was more beautiful than Vanessa, more captivating than any socialite he had ever known. Why were you hiding this? He demanded, though his voice was softer now, stripped of its venom. Lila's hands trembled, clutching the wig to her chest. Her carefully guarded secret hung in the air like a loaded gun. I, I had my reasons, she whispered, her voice breaking. And Ethan, for the first time in months, felt something other than bitterness. Confusion, regret, and a strange, undeniable pull toward the woman he thought he despised. The storm outside roared on, but inside another storm had begun, one that would unravel lies, shatter illusions, and force Ethan to question everything he believed about revenge, beauty, and love. His world had shifted, and there was no turning back. The storm outside had quieted to a steady rain, but inside the mansion the air remained heavy, thick with unspoken words. Ethan stood rooted in the doorway, staring at the fragile figure before him. The woman he thought he had humiliated, the one he dragged into a cold, loveless marriage, was not at all who she seemed. Lila's trembling hands clutched the wig against her chest, her face pale and tear-streaked. For a long time, she said nothing, as if weighing the danger of the truth she was about to release. Then in a voice so soft it nearly vanished into the sound of the rain, she spoke. "My name isn't Lila." Ethan's brows furrowed, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you talking about?" She took a shuddering breath, setting the wig down with trembling fingers. Her beautiful bare face looked heartbreakingly vulnerable under the flickering light. "I was born Princess Ilara of Velmora, the last surviving daughter of King Alden." Ethan's blood ran cold. Velmora? The name hit him like a distant bell, a forgotten kingdom, wiped off the map in a brutal coup years ago. A massacre, a betrayal, a royal family slaughtered for power. Lila, no, Ilara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "My entire family, my mother, my father, my brothers, all murdered in one night. Soldiers stormed the palace gates. I was 13. My nanny hid me in a servant's cart while blood painted the floors of my home." Her voice cracked, haunted by memories too dark for anyone her age to carry. Ethan's throat tightened. Why, why live like this? As a maid? "Because they're still hunting me," she whispered, voice trembling. "The men who took my kingdom, led by a cruel warlord named Cale Voran. He seeks to marry me, to claim royal blood and legitimize his stolen throne. If he finds me, I'll be forced into his hands. Or killed." The room seemed to shrink around them, the weight of her confession filling every shadowed corner. "The marriage to you," she continued, her eyes glistening, "it was my shield. If I was legally bound to someone else, he couldn't take me without a war. I thought, I thought being invisible as a maid would keep me safe." Ethan's heart pounded, guilt twisting inside him like a blade. He had used this marriage to mock love, to hurt his ex, to shame an innocent girl. But this wasn't some ordinary girl. This was a princess in hiding, a fugitive of royalty carrying centuries of bloodline in her veins. And she had married him not out of love, but out of desperation. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. Shame settled in his stomach like a stone. "I never meant to deceive you," Ilara murmured, blinking back tears. I had nowhere else to run." Lightning lit the room once more, but it wasn't the storm outside that shook Ethan now. It was the storm within. The girl he had mocked, neglected, and humiliated was the last surviving heir to a fallen kingdom. And without knowing it, he had just married a princess. Everything had changed, and deep down Ethan knew this was no longer just about revenge. It never was. The morning after the storm, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the mansion, but the warmth it brought did little to thaw the ice that gripped Ethan's heart. Sleep had eluded him. All night he'd wrestled with the truth Lila, no, Princess Ilara, had entrusted him with. He paced his study, his mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Guilt gnawed at him like a relentless predator. How could he have treated her that way? Mocked her? Used her as a pawn in his foolish revenge? She wasn't some plain, ordinary maid. She was royalty, a survivor, a woman carrying unbearable grief and the weight of a shattered kingdom on her slender shoulders. But alongside the guilt was something else. Fascination. It crept in silently, unsettling him in ways he wasn't prepared for. Every time he remembered the image of her face without disguise, her soulful eyes glimmering in candlelight, he felt his chest tighten. Not out of pity. No, this was different. He started to notice things he had ignored before. The quiet way Lila moved through the house, graceful as a dancer. The courage in her gaze despite everything she'd endured. The strength it must have taken to survive, to live among those who looked down on her. To wear a mask every day while hiding the blood of kings in her veins. Ethan found himself watching her from a distance. He caught glimpses of her tending to the garden, her hands gentle with the flowers. He saw the way she spoke kindly to the staff, even those who had whispered cruel things about her behind her back. The Lila he thought he knew was a lie. This was the real woman, and she was unlike anyone he'd ever met. And that realization shook him. "What are you doing to me?" he muttered to himself, rubbing his face, confused and unmoored. But while Ethan's heart was in turmoil, elsewhere in the mansion, danger brewed. Vanessa, sharp-eyed and ever hungry for control, had not missed the flicker of change in Ethan's gaze. She saw the way he looked at Lila now. Softer, unsettled. It infuriated her. This was supposed to be her victory. She was meant to watch Ethan break the pitiful Maid, humiliate her until she ran away. But Lila stayed, and something about her didn't add up. Vanessa began to dig. She bribed a servant or two, watched for strange behavior, convinced that beneath that shy, awkward facade lay a scandalous secret. Something dark, something she could expose. If she couldn't have Ethan's heart, she would make sure no one else could either, especially not a maid. "You can't fool me, you pathetic little thing," Vanessa hissed to herself, watching from a corner window as Lila tended the roses. "I'll tear that mask off your face and show Ethan what you really are." The game had shifted. Ethan, torn by guilt and unexpected tenderness, was beginning to see the truth. Vanessa, consumed by jealousy, was closing in, determined to destroy whatever fragile bond was forming between them. And Lila carried her secrets and sorrow like a crown only she could bear. The storm might have passed, but a new, more dangerous one was gathering. And this time, hearts would be the battleground. The air inside the mansion had grown tense, heavy with things left unsaid and threats that lurked in the shadows. Lila had been careful, avoiding Vanessa's venomous gaze and Ethan's conflicted eyes. She knew danger was closing in, yet she had no idea how close it truly was. Vanessa's jealousy had rotted into something darker. She wasn't content to merely humiliate Lila anymore. No, she wanted her gone, erased, and she had found a way. One evening, under the guise of a private conversation, Vanessa cornered Lila in the dimly lit corridor near the garden. "You think you fooled everyone, don't you?" Vanessa sneered, her voice low and sharp as a blade. "But I know you're hiding something. And tonight, the world will see what a lying little thief you are." Lila's pulse quickened, but she kept her face calm, knowing panic would give Vanessa the upper hand. Vanessa slipped a note into Lila's hand, forcing her to take it. "Meet me at the old greenhouse by midnight, unless you want your dirty little secrets exposed to Ethan and the press." Then with a smirk, she vanished into the shadows. Lila knew it was a trap. Every part of her screamed to run. But she had no choice. Vanessa was dangerous, and exposure could mean her death at the hands of those still hunting her. Midnight came, and with trembling hands, Lila made her way to the old abandoned greenhouse on the far edge of the estate. The place reeked of damp earth and rotting wood. It was too quiet. She stepped inside, her breath visible in the cold night air. "You actually came." Vanessa's voice was thick with cruel satisfaction. She stepped out from behind a pillar, flanked by two men with hard eyes and rough faces. Hired thugs. "You see, darling," Vanessa purred, "I did a little digging. And guess what? You're not a maid. You're not even Lila. You're a fugitive royal brat. And I've made arrangements to have you sent straight back to those charming men who murdered your family. One phone call, and you'll be gift-wrapped and deported." Lila's blood ran cold. The thugs advanced, ready to grab her. Vanessa smirked, savoring the fear in Lila's eyes. But she wasn't afraid for long. A sudden crash shattered the stillness. The greenhouse door flew open, and Ethan stormed in, his eyes blazing. "Stay the hell away from her!" he roared. The thugs barely had time to react before Ethan charged, fists flying. The fight was vicious. Ethan, driven by rage and something deeper he hadn't yet named, took them down one by one. Blood and broken glass littered the ground. Vanessa screamed as one of the thugs collapsed at her feet. "Ethan, you don't understand. She's lying to you." But Ethan wasn't listening. Not anymore. He grabbed Lila's hand, pulling her close, shielding her behind him. "Touch her again, Vanessa, and I swear you'll regret it." His voice was low, deadly. Vanessa's face twisted in fury and disbelief. "She's not who you think she is, Ethan. I know exactly who she is." Ethan cut in, eyes locked on Lila's trembling figure. "And she's under my protection now." The words hung in the air, heavier than any bullet. For the first time, Ethan felt the full force of his protective instinct. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It wasn't fascination. It was something far deeper. A fierce, unshakable need to keep her safe, to shield her from every storm the world might throw. As Vanessa fled into the night, defeated but still dangerous, Ethan held Lila against his chest, feeling her shaking breasts. He knew this wasn't over. But one thing was clear. He would fight for her, no matter what. The night after the greenhouse incident, the mansion was silent, but inside Ethan's heart, a storm raged louder than ever. The image of Lila, trembling, brave, her wide eyes filled with quiet resilience, refused to leave his mind. He sat by the window of his study, staring out at the moonlight pooling over the grounds, unable to sleep, unable to shake the ache in his chest. For so long, Ethan believed his heart had turned to stone. Betrayal had scarred him. Revenge had consumed him. His marriage to Lila was supposed to be a cruel mockery of love, a hollow victory over his past. Yet here he was, falling for the very woman he'd meant to hurt. And it wasn't just her beauty, though now that he truly saw her, free from disguises, her natural grace shining through, she was devastatingly beautiful. But it was more than her face, more than the delicate curve of her smile or the softness in her eyes. It was her soul, her quiet courage, the way she bore unimaginable pain with dignity, the strength in her silence, the kindness in her actions, the gentle resilience of a woman who'd lost everything, yet still managed to bloom like a wildflower in the harshest of places. Ethan's chest tightened. He couldn't keep this in any longer. "I have to tell her," he whispered to himself. Later that night, he found Lila in the small reading room by the fire, curled up with a book. She looked up, startled, when he entered, her eyes cautious, but no longer cold. "Ethan," she said softly. He took a deep breath, walking toward her, feeling more vulnerable than he had in years. "Lila, I need to say something, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you deserve to hear it." She set the book aside, her hands trembling slightly, bracing herself. He knelt in front of her, eyes searching hers. "I was lost before you came into my life," he began, voice thick with emotion. "So consumed by anger, by betrayal, I let it turn me into something cruel. Marrying you wasn't about love. It was a twisted game I played with my own broken heart." Lila's gaze softened, tears glinting in her lashes. "But somewhere along the way," Ethan continued, reaching for her hand, You began to heal me. Not with your beauty, though God knows you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, but with your heart, your strength, your grace, your quiet courage." His voice cracked, and he squeezed her hand gently. "You made me see what love really is. Not some conquest, not revenge, but this. The ache I feel when you hurt. The way my world stops when you walk into a room. I've fallen for you, Lila, and it terrifies me." Lila's breath hitched, her heart pounding in her chest. She dreamed of these words but never imagined hearing them from him. "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered, "for everything. I never meant to hurt you. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you, making it right." For a long moment, there was only silence between them. Heavy, tender, trembling. Then a tear slid down Lila's cheek, and she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I was lost too, Ethan. But maybe maybe we can find our way together. In that quiet room beside the flickering fire, two broken hearts began to mend. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something that wasn't rage or guilt or emptiness. He felt hope. The grand chandelier sparkled overhead as the city's elite gathered for the annual midnight gala. A night of glittering gowns, sharp suits, and whispered deals. Ethan had brought Lila as his wife, no longer hiding her behind shadows. She stood beside him, radiant in a flowing midnight blue gown that hugged her delicate figure. Her face uncovered, her true beauty undeniable. But beneath the glamour, an unshakable tension simmered. Lila's heart thudded against her ribs, her eyes darting around the glittering hall. She'd felt it all evening, the unmistakable, suffocating presence of danger. The shadows of her past had finally crept into the light, and then she saw them. Three men dressed in sharp suits, eyes cold and cruel. The same faces from her nightmares. The warlord's men, the ones who had murdered her family and hunted her like prey for years. Their leader, Viktor Drakov, a powerful, ruthless man, known for his unyielding thirst for power, smiled darkly as he spotted her. Ethan noticed her pale face, the terror in her eyes. He followed her gaze and understood instantly. "It's them, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice low but sharp. Lila nodded, her throat tight. "I never thought they'd find me here," she whispered, her hands trembling. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped in front of her, shielding her with his own body. His blue eyes hardened into cold steel, his handsome face unreadable. "Not tonight, not ever," he vowed. As the crowd mingled, the men approached, their confidence evident. Victor spoke first, his voice like oil. "Your Highness," he sneered mockingly, "running was foolish. Now come quietly and we'll spare your pretty little head." A collective gasp spread through the nearby guests, their curious stares now fixed on Lila. Ethan stepped forward, voice lethal. "She's my wife, and if you so much as breathe wrong in her direction, I'll bury you and your empire myself." Lila touched Ethan's arm, stepping out from behind him, her body trembling. But her voice rang clear. "Enough," she cried, the room falling eerily silent. Every eye turned to her. "I am Princess Lila of the Avansar Kingdom, daughter of the late King Aldrich, and I will no longer hide from the likes of you." The words felt like fire on her tongue, both terrifying and freeing. Gasps and murmurs filled the ballroom. The press, the politicians, the socialites, they had no idea they were standing in the presence of royalty. Victor snarled, "You'll regret this, girl." But before he could finish, Ethan landed a brutal punch to his jaw, sending the man crashing into a table of wine glasses. Chaos erupted. Ethan fought off Victor's men with savage determination, his protective fury unmatched. Security rushed in, and the police, already tipped off by Ethan's assistant, swarmed the hall. Lila stood tall amidst the madness, refusing to flee. When Victor was dragged away in cuffs, his threats silenced, Lila exhaled a shaky breath. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming rush of freedom. Ethan returned to her side, his knuckles bloodied, his chest heaving. "It's over," he said softly, cupping her face. "You're safe." For the first time, Lila truly believed it. In that ballroom filled with shattered glasses and stunned onlookers, she was no longer a hunted maid. She was a princess, a survivor, a wife, and she wasn't alone anymore. The aftermath of the gala spread like wildfire through the city. Headlines screamed, "Lost Princess Revealed," while photographs of Lila, standing fearlessly beside Ethan as he defended her, dominated every screen and paper. The world, once indifferent to her presence, now couldn't stop speaking her name. But the true battle had only begun. In the days that followed, the court of public opinion turned swiftly. Vanessa, once the darling of high society, became the villain of the hour. Her cruel schemes, her humiliation of Lila, and her alliance with dangerous men to destroy an innocent woman were exposed for all to see. Former friends turned their backs, and her reputation crumbled like ash in a storm. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself walking a path he never thought possible. Gone was the man driven by vengeance, whose heart had been hardened by betrayal. In its place stood someone humbled, someone awakened, a man deeply in love with the woman he once mocked. Lila's days were filled with meetings, letters, and royal envoys, as the Avansar kingdom's loyalists reached out, begging her to return and reclaim her rightful throne. The palace awaited her. A country needed her. But one evening beneath the soft glow of the garden lanterns, Lila made her choice. She found Ethan by the old fountain, his face illuminated by the gentle light, his eyes reflecting both hope and fear. "You have a kingdom waiting, Lila," Ethan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't owe me anything." She stepped closer, her hand finding his. "But I owe myself everything," she whispered. "And my heart, it belongs here. Not as Princess Lila, but as your wife, as Lila, the woman who loves you." Ethan's breath caught. He searched her face, still unable to fully believe that after everything, after the cold wedding, the lies and the storm of violence, she was choosing him. Not the crown, not the power. Him. You'd give up a kingdom for me?" he asked hoarsely. She smiled softly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm taking back my life, and I want to build it with you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like a treasure he once foolishly discarded. Across the city, Vanessa faced the consequences of her deeds. Disgraced, isolated, and humiliated, she fled the public eye, haunted by the bitter irony that the man she sought to control had chosen the very woman she scorned. The world embraced Lila's story, not just of royalty reclaimed, but of courage, dignity, and love rising from the ashes. For the first time in years, Lila felt truly free. She was no longer a shadow, nor a pawn in others' cruel games. She was loved, not for her name or title, but for the heart that endured everything. As Ethan kissed her under the starlit sky, he whispered against her lips, "You saved me, Lila. I was lost, and you brought me back." And she knew, without a trace of doubt, that this was her true kingdom. The sun set low over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Ethan stood at the edge of the balcony, looking out at the vast city before him. The city he had built, the empire that once consumed him, now feeling strangely empty without the woman he loved by his side. Lila was there, as always, just a few steps away, watching him in the quiet of the evening. But this time, something was different. Something had shifted in the air between them. The silence felt heavier, charged with anticipation. Ethan turned to face her, his heart racing. Gone was the man who once sought revenge, the man who had used her as a pawn. In his place stood someone who knew, with every beat of his heart, that Lila was the only person who could fill the void in his life. "Lila," he began, his voice unsteady. She raised an eyebrow, her heart already sensing the gravity in his tone. "Ethan, what's wrong?" He took a deep breath, stepping toward her. This was it. No more games, no more hiding behind masks. There was no empire to prove, no crown to claim. There was only the two of them, standing at the crossroads of their future. "I've wronged you in more ways than I can count," he confessed, his eyes full of regret. "I manipulated you, used you, treated you like nothing. I didn't see you for the woman you are until it was almost too late. And for that, I'm sorry. But there's one thing I'm sure of now. I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Lila's breath caught in her throat as she felt her heart swelling with emotion. She had never expected this, never imagined that the man who once tore her apart would now be standing before her, vulnerable, open, and honest. But here he was, offering her something far more precious than any throne or title, the truth of his love. "Ethan," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Without another word, he dropped to one knee, taking her hand in his. The weight of his gaze made her heart skip a beat as he gazed up at her, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Lila, will you marry me?" he asked, his voice thick with raw emotion. "Not as the princess you once were, but as the woman who saved me, the woman I want to spend forever with. Will you be mine, not out of obligation, but because you love me as I love you?" A single tear slipped down Lila's cheek as she looked at him, her heart overwhelmed by the sincerity in his eyes. She had never thought this day would come, not in 1,000 years. But now, standing here with him, all of the pain, the doubts, and the fears melted away. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes." He stood, pulling her into his arms, his lips crashing against hers in a kiss filled with every emotion they had never dared to express before. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about power or pride. This was about love, pure, unfiltered love. Their kiss ended, but their love story was just beginning. Months passed, and the world watched as Ethan and Lila took their place together. Not as a prince and princess, but as partners, equals in every sense. They combined his empire with her lost kingdom, rebuilding it from the ashes of their past, and forging a future unlike any they had imagined. Ethan had once believed he needed to conquer the world to feel whole. Now, standing beside Lila, he realized that true strength lay in love and unity. Together, they ruled not through power and fear, but through understanding, compassion, and trust. They rebuilt what had been broken, not just in their kingdoms, but in their hearts. Their union became a symbol of resilience, of redemption, and of love's ability to heal even the deepest wounds. And as the sun set over their world, they knew they had found their forever, a love that was unbreakable, a crown built not from gold, but from the strength of two hearts beating as one.